same. Distant as the fading light, so far away, but still so close. Only now I know where I want to go. Only now I know where I want to go. Well, we almost missed each other. I'm so glad you caught my eye. We were both in deeper waters. Running free was on our minds. I left to find the answers, or did I leave it all for you? For the beauty of Moana underneath a liquid moon. Oh, what a night! Oh, what a scene! Watching you drift away with me. Oh, what a night! Oh, what a scene! Watching you drift away with me. Only now I know where I want to go. Only now I know where I want to go. 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 That day I walked by the river, remembering the days of young. Mama, the food she delivered, our bellies were so full and fun. We heard a plane in the air flying up above, the enemy from overseas. I grabbed my family by the hand and we ran away. We're running from the enemy. No roots, no roots, no culture. We're running from the enemy. No roots, no roots, no culture. I'm hiding with my family. Inside the room we would hide and the sun was gone. So quiet as we lay
Kia ora, kia ora.
Kia ora.
Got out there on Facebook and in Twitch. I think Toy's gone to the wharepaku actually, so he'll be here in a sec.
Yep.
Quite over there on Twitch actually, but
our TV screen need to be
I'm
on.
just getting that sorted. Yeah, I'm just sorting that for you now.
Kia ora.
Got up.
Can't believe you guys started without me.
We were losing viewers.
Ah.
I haven't actually. I'm just going to get Dad's screen set up there, bro. If you want to do the shout outs on the comments.
Yeah, sure. Oh, even having a kai. Good on you, my bro. I mean, kia ora koutou. Oh, good to have you with us another week. We've got a great guest tonight. We have a wahine toa, wahine kaha, wahine
Pūrotu.
pūrotu, tangata tino koi. Yeah, ko Nahuia Murphy tērā. So she's coming to join us, coming to have a conversation, a kōrero, a catch up about her time spent with other Indigenous people. You spent time with other Indigenous people, haven't you, Dad?
Yep. Yeah, all around in Asia and in Canada.
The Americas.
Yeah. Met up with the Samis and all around up in Russia. There's quite a huge Indigenous group in Russia, all around in that whole area. Up in Norway over the years. Bueno, e mihi kau tana kia koutou e hoa mā mō tēnei wiki Pākehā. Te tīmatatana o te wiki Pākehā e mihi kau tana ia koutou e rarau mai nei ki kona i tēnei ahiahi. Hoi no i te e miha tana ia koutou mo nā take kaupapa i wainunui ia koutou, nā mate huhua i wainunui ia koutou. Anō rei a tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou e whakapiri mai, whakatata mai nei a mātau. Te whānau iti, i tīnā kupu, i tīnā kōrero, engari whānui nā whakaaro kitena. Anō reira e hoa mā tēnā koutou. Kēnā hoki koutou e te motu ki te ao. And greetings to all of you right around here in the motu. And in particular, all our whānau there too in Australia and in other parts of the world. Yeah, so yep, I have been having this conversation over the years and sharing, in particular in the early days, meeting up with all the Indigenous groups internationally through Hauora Tana, working in Hauora, mental health working with men. And has been a very interesting journey, and an interesting thing about it is e hoa mai is the fact that we can, we can actually connect to them. So at the moment, even today, I have been communicating with a group there with the bro there from Canada. And in particular, what's kind of happening up in Canada with the gas oil pipes, and there have been some resistance. And I guess that because of what's been happening in Europe And so all of those kaupapa seem to get lost in the mist. So our roles and responsibility really around bringing some of those kaupapa here on board. So we got our tuahine here on board with us. I have known her and her whānau and their mum and dad over the years. And they particularly with her papa have been the main drive in instigating and bringing the issues on Te Tiriti o Waitangi and to make it more accessible. I guess having those whakaaro accessible to our community, what do they look like, and putting the challenges to the whānau. So it'd be really good to talk to the Tui and Hui tonight. And
she's a tangata tipi haere too, isn't she?
Aye.
Oh, I see her bloody Facebook posts. She's all here, there, everywhere, hanging out with really cool Indigenous academic types.
Yeah,
doing mahi.
Yeah, well, she's been around a long time and been hanging out with their mum and dad, particularly with their dad, and around some of these issues. And I have seen her over the years and some of the in events and with Eva Rickard and all of that. So she's been around a long time, and of course that was so she made commitments to go and further her knowledge and into the academic world. And,
her master's degree was incredible. She did an analysis around attitudes towards ikura, or as you know, we often call it the mate wahine. But she took exception to that term, the female sickness, mate wahine. It was like, no, he ikura tērā. And so she broke down that whole kōrero for her masters, which was, I actually bought that book and gave it to my daughter when she, as Indigenous people put it, when she came into her moon. And it's good. I think it's good to reframe those kinds of kōrero.
And it's good too that and it's really good too that our mātauranga and wharewananga is able to provide those learnings, and is the availability of that. A lot of those kōrero come from the ancient kōrero and what's been available. It's really good that we're able to still got those knowledge around there, so we can provide those, share those knowledge and whakapapa. They are actually whakapapa. And so it's so we can, so it would be good to have this conversation with her. Yeah.
So she's coming up at about 6:30ish. She's going to come on, have a kōrero.
I better send you that link, eh?
Yes.
So that she can connect to us.
Just send it to my Facebook Messenger.
So the other thing too is, just talking about the painting that is up for sale. We talk about that.
Yes, yep. So there is a special auction that has just started today, and if you go to tameiti.co.nz, we'll put that up in the comments. tameiti.co.nz. You can view that painting. It is just a single item, and that is a painting called Te Moana Nui a Toi, and that is part of fundraising for the in memorial of those that we lost and those that were injured during the 2019 Whakaari eruption. They had a golf tournament. When was that, on Friday, eh?
Yeah, that was on Friday.
On Friday, they had a golf tournament on Friday, which they have annually to raise money and do an auction. And Dad painted a painting for that, and so we have started an auction for it. So that's up on at tameiti.co.nz if you're interested in buying that. That's all the proceeds from that sale go to the National Burns Unit, which operates out of Middlemore. So, yeah, go check it out. I'll put it up on the on our Facebook in the comments now.
I'm just going to go a quick shout and go through roll call, basically. Wakataua, kia ora. Tangi Kōpū, good evening, good to see you. Frankie Kinraid, enjoyed hearing you talking about my dear friend Tom Poata the other day. Dan, that's what Frankie's saying. Who else we got there? We've got Kylie Cherkrop. Kia ora, kia ora. Rawiri Rauwhero. Kia ora, ko matua tame ngā mihi. Joanne Black, loving your painting. You are working on some amazing colours.
Yeah.
We've got Mituvane Taura. Kia ora, good to see you again. Rocky Delamere, kia ora. Over on Twitch, we've got Māori Maiden. Kia ora, Māori Maiden, good to see you. Tūhoi Chief. Kia ora e hoa. And the wonderful Tashi George in there too in Twitch. Kia ora, Tashi. I'm guessing that's the chop suey I'm eating right now was from you, so thanks for that.
Not even I cooked it.
Oh, did you?
No.
Right, that's what I thought. Tanya Marie Wida. Kia ora. We've got Manu who we got there? Manu Tangiata. Sorry, I haven't got my glasses on, so it's hard for me to read. Kia ora. Tāwera Tehira. Also checking in. Oh, look at that. We actually have a legitimate from Joshua out there on YouTube. I think sometimes it tends to be spam, but that looks like a legitimate one there. So kia ora, Joshua. Welcome to the stream, Brian Gardner. Good to see you again, Ehua. Over there in the gong, the woolen gong.
The gong.
Cheer up, Brian.
Kia ora Ehua. Kia ora te te moko puna o tūpiki from Waikirikiri. I remember your korero back in the 60s, and was pretty out of the old kaumātua that one. Pretty old school stuff. And I remember the days, because a good thing about because we'll be having a kōrero about it, but he wouldn't allow the mother to breastfeed the baby in the bedroom, so it had to come into the kitchen. I'm not too sure what that's all about. And I remember having that conversation, hearing that kōrero around. Yeah, all of that. Tūpiki was it's a funny name, Tūpiki. I don't know where he got that name from. And but he had a lot of whāngai, a lot of kids during my generation. So kia ora kia koe e hoa for that kōrero.
Kia ora ABC 123 over on YouTube. Glad you're not spam, bro. That's good. And the Kazi Amos, kia ora e hoa.
Yeah, kia ora, yeah. Kia ora,
bit of a suspect name though, ABC 123.
Yeah,
Kinda. But, that's a human response. I'm not spam.
ABC.
Sounds like my password to everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I apologise if you guys can hear me eat. I just drove down from Tāmaki Makaurau today. I stopped off in Tauranga to help some friends set up a studio and a live streaming studio, and it just rolled in like 5 minutes before here. So
literally.
I didn't have a chance to eat anything.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. Looks good. Just don't get it caught up in your beard and your whiskers, my bro. Kia ora, Deirdre. Thank you. Thank you for your mihi e hoa, chiffron, hinare. Kia ora, tūhoi. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, tūhoi waikato. Yeah. Everybody always refer to us as tūhoi. Tika tēnā kōrero. Enari he whakapapa mātau ki te arawa whāni, ue nuku kōpako, roro o te rani, nā te whakaue, tō mātau kuia no reira, tāna ino ko matariki. Enari mai tō mātau korau no Waikato, no roto kāwhia, i Taharoa, kāwhia, whānau wetere, tētai wāhi ki Ngāti Wairere, ki Kirikiri roa. Koe rā hau nei, ko hau a Wairere, ara te other Wairere next door. Yeah, and interesting thing about those, we just got to keep reminding ourselves. So every now and then I see tūhoi. Ai, tika tēnā, I pake ke ia mai au tūhoi, ēnari, angari anō e tau o ko whakapo. Kia ora, kia koutou.
Kōrero. Oh, Mama Sue.
It's Catherine.
Glad you're looking forward to tonight. I told her Nahui was coming on. She was like,
is Catherine telling me off for not eating at the kitchen?
Catherine, maybe cultural upbringing, eat at the table in the kitchen. Just don't sit on it. Oh, watching from Brisbane, Australia. How's the flooding going over there, bro? Man, you guys have had it rough. I tell you though, not all the Aussies, but I saw some great TikToks coming out of Brisbane, and they were just totally cracking jokes as their houses were like waist deep in floodwaters. And there was this one guy sitting down at his computer, and he was like, oh shit. And he rushes off and he goes, and he acts like he forgot to turn the tap off because his house is completely flooded. I don't know, it's pretty hearty to be keeping your comic sensibility together while your house is completely flooded. But hoi anō. Just keep an eye out for Nahuia. She said she's on her way. On her ways.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Is she coming here or is she going to be online?
Yeah, no, she's zooming in, like usual. It's a bit hard when they come in. I guess it's actually a bit technically more difficult. You got to find another camera. Most people got cameras for their Zooms and stuff, so even though she's just down the road, it's easier to get her in on the Zoom.
Yeah. Yep. So they're taking the tax off petrol, so you can by midnight tonight, the kōrero at the Kawanatana.
45 cents.
Yeah.
Wait,
why did he looks like he hasn't heard that news?
Yeah.
You just filled up, didn't you?
News, but I'm really
midnight.
Yeah, I did. I'm really upset. I'm really upset with Jacinda.
Yeah, it's Jacinda doing it to you.
How could she? How could she do that?
That niece of ours.
Damn it.
Yeah, I think they're doing it for 3 months. It's going to cost them $350 million, which they're getting from I don't know where. But households do need a bit of relief because shit is expensive out there. You know, if you're
I signed the petition for that. I signed the petition, and the lady there, the hunting lady, the pig hunting lady, just one sent the send the petition out.
Sorry, 25 cents. Sorry, Fano, not 45 cents. Fact check, 25 cents.
Yeah, no, 25 cents, not 45 cents.
Hang on a second.
But still,
it's getting less
25 cents is still a big job.
Oh,
it's a scam. It's a scam. I think the whole thing is a scam.
Whole thing's a scam.
Yeah, the whole thing. Picture thing is a scam. Capitalism is
a scam. You heard it here first.
Oh, no, I haven't changed the name. Tell you what, let me just get rid of that. Bring you over across. Kia ora, kia ora.
Oh, tēnā koe, sis. Kia ora.
Yeah.
Hey. Oh, yeah, no, what it is just... Oh, we're just having a chat. We're just talking about the petrol tax that's coming off and going to give us a little bit of relief at the pump, apparently. Dad's saying it's a scam. Capitalism is a scam.
Yep, it sure is a scam. Yeah, it's a total scam.
I thought he'd find a friend in you on that front.
Yeah. And they're blaming Putin for it. Not even
Putin, eh? Not even your mate Putin.
Nah, in my boat.
Oh my gosh.
See what we have to deal with now, Nahuia?
We're going to have to clean that one up on Monday.
I like your painting. Tame.
Oh, yeah. No, get in there.
Shaping up.
Yeah, every day. Trying to. It's not an easy thing. Sometimes you kind of get stuck. Every now and then I get stuck. And I'm looking forward to the new stuff we're working for Wellington. Creating ida tanata. You'll see it more cut up in steel, and different. So we hope to do at least 100 of them. Ida tanata.
Wow.
So this for the whakatuma te ani pōneke. And we've been talking about that for a little while now, but it's definitely going to happen. So I'm really looking forward to that. And getting my hands around steel, shaping, there will be big life size. And I can't wait to see that happen. Yeah.
Hey, kia ora, sis. Thanks for coming on with us tonight.
Yeah.
It's great to have you here. Everyone out there, this is Nahuia Murphy. She's an amazingly talented sister who does lots of mahi all over the place. And we had your mate Nando Tanchos on the other week. And he's your baby daddy, eh? Is that how you say, is that how the kids say it these days?
I don't know.
I don't know. Something like that. He's your mate.
He's
and
my mate.
He's your
He's my
mate.
mate. Yeah.
He's your mate, and he was great. And then we were like, we gotta get the sis Nahuia on as well, because she's equally as choice. And I was telling Dad that.
Me and him tag team.
Oh yeah.
Me and him tag team. We had this conversation about 25 years ago, him and I, on our way back from Waitangi. When we decided that we were going to be together, we decided that we would have to tag team, and the reality was for us in our relationship that at some time either one of us could end up in jail, because we're both committed to our movements.
Yes.
I was a tino rangatira-tanga activist from an activist whānau, and he was a wild green environmental activist, social justice activist. And so that was the pact that we made.
Yeah. I remember those days. I remember. I was there. Yeah.
Yeah, you were there. Yeah, you were there.
I was there. I remember you when you first met. Actually, I watched you looking at like that. No, I remember those days. Yeah. Kia ora for that.
Yeah. And I miss Waitangi. I miss those Waitangi.
What
in the 90s. Waitangi in the 90s.
I miss the people. I miss the movement.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's different now. Everybody's online.
Yeah.
We don't meet face to face like we used to, and we don't pitoi like we used to. We don't noho like we used to.
Yeah.
There was a bit of movement down in Wellington recently. It was a little bit different though.
I do think that we need to get together.
And so, do you think that maybe that's part of the reason why Wellington, that Wellington situation kicked off as hard as it did, because they're
every generation of tangata whenua will instinctively revolt against the system, because we know that it's unjust, and we'll gravitate toward activism, and
Yeah.
So do you think if we'd had more things happening at Waitangi, that might have been a little bit more, cohesive? Or is there beauty in the chaos of it? Is there?
I don't know. I don't know about the chaos of Welly. There were so many different kind of groups and interests down there,
It was a lot cleaner up in Waitangi, wasn't it? It's just tino rangatira-tanga. It's like just Māori rights, land rights, reo rights. It's just very clear.
Yeah.
It's just us. It's just us. We're not competing with other kaupapa. It's just us and our intergenerational struggle for self-determination in our own country as Indigenous people. Simple.
But you've travelled around the world a lot, Nahuia, and hung out with lots of different Indigenous people. And what are the, we always kind of compare and relate one situation to another situation. Because I know when I was over in Hawaii, for example, they always see us Māori as, they crack jokes that when the Māoris turn up, they got to kind of get really serious about things and start getting their tikanga together and stuff like that.
Yeah, I I don't know. I love the Hawaiians so much. I just find them so, I think they're pono and tūturu e. And what I love about them is the way that they continue to raise their prayers and chants of reverence to their own atua. I don't hear them praying to Jesus. And you know that the stand at Mauna Kea, when I look at the discipline, the way they held the mountain, and the kōrero coming off the mountain about them being in full alignment from the kupuna, the tipuna, and the awairua and the spirit world, all the way to the mothers on the front line, pregnant with the next generation, all in total alignment, you know, and taking a stand for the sacred, for their sacred relationships to Poliahu, the Atua Wahine, who's up there on the Mauna and Wākea. So I love that about the Hawaiians, and I really do. Yeah. And I think, you know, we like to think that as tangata whenua, we like to think that we are leading the world, leading the Indigenous world and this and that. And yet, some things maybe we are, but you know, we've all got strengths and weaknesses, and I mean the discipline of our relations in Turtle Island to hold their to continue to have discipline, you know, and hold the tapu of the really ancient ceremonial societies is just level there.
In Great Turtle Island.
Not corrupted by Christianity. Well, I love that. They're not corrupted by other teachings. They're very disciplined and serious, and they maintain the discipline of silence around their ceremonies. They're very careful who they share with, very careful who they bring into their ceremonies, and maybe that's one of the reasons why they've managed to survive in the belly of the beast for 500 years, you know, of pretty brutal and extreme colonial violence.
Yeah, totally.
You know, because our spiritualities are our foundations as Indigenous people, you know, and the source of our sustenance and nourishment. So they'll go toe to toe with armed forces, just like Mauna Kea, just like our Hawaiian relations on the mountain. On the one side, the armed forces, they had their weapons, and our Hawaiian relations, they had their chants and their love for their atua, you know.
Well, I like all their rituals, and particularly around the sweat lodge. So you have the sweat lodge, and I really love the rituals around the fire, the ahitahutahu, and we do have those. It's a really. I did 20 years just doing the whare o mahuika, just lighting the fires and the sweat lodge. And I picked that up there a lot there when I was in Canada and the States. Now, you're so right about that kōrero. You know, ki te wete all those whakaaro that have been implanted in our people for the last 250 years. You know, nā whakaaro karaisia, even the hahi ringatu, and I also put that whakaaro. It's really just having a conversation with them, not trying to put down, but we need, how do we have this conversation without really undermining their own whakaaro? And so we need to, or whether we just go straight into it. Yeah, I don't know, there's no easy way to it. You know, in the way that, yeah. Or else we just go around and do our own practice, instead of doing what you're doing what other people are doing, you know, and do those practices.
Because I've seen you around it. I've seen you around at you know, talking about those practices, and I remember spending I think it was a winter solstice with you, and you had your own rituals going on, sis, and it was beautiful though. It was an honor to hang out with you and our mates out on the beach, and just to take that time and that moment to acknowledge the place and space and time that we were in, and certainly hanging out with you, and you bring a certain flair to the ritual as well, and that was amazing.
Yeah, and it's about honouring Papa Tuanaku.
Aye.
Hey, and our relationship to her. E mahi tangata whenua take.
Aye.
Tātou tēnā, born from the womb of the mother, Papa Tuanaku. You know, because that's the thing about Christianity, is it demonized the Atua Wahine. Severed our relationships to them. So we're on an intergenerational journey of cultural recovery, and a fundamental part of that is recovering our relationships to the Atua and the Atua Wahine, and restoring the balance that colonization destroyed.
I always find we have it's nearly like we've got cultural schizophrenia sometimes when we go on for a pōhiri, which is a acting out of it's a ritualized version of a story. The kōrero, when you enter and you go through the pōhiri process, then you get on the other side and we start invoking Peter, Paul, Simon and John and Jesus, and I'm like, this is really difficult to bring these things together. We seem to just go through it and not really think about it, but I worry sometimes that we suffer from a cultural schizophrenia in that space.
Well, we do.
I find it deeply uncomfortable. I find it so uncomfortable. When I was about 3 years old, my parents took me to church on Ngāti Manawa Road in Murupara, where we lived. The one and only time they took me to church. And apparently, in the middle of the prayers and stuff, in the pause, in the silence, I yelled out, "Fuck!" and then broke out into happy birthday, started singing happy birthday. So that kind of instinctive kind of
rebellion.
Instinct to revolt and rebel, it's always been there. And then, of course, it was cultivated by the fact that I grew up in Taranaki. Yeah. And we had Huirangi Waikere Puru, and
yes.
Ruka Fulton and Sunny Waru, and just some extraordinary kahuna down there, who had those beautiful karakia tūturu, and Dad would come home and, well, he had a radio. Remember that radio talkback show?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and he on Te Korimako Taranaki.
Te Korimako.
He had his talkback show. He'd go,
oh, Mr. Flavor was it?
On the marae out here, folks. What do you think? Give me a ring. Let's have a talk about it. And the phones would be hot, and there'd be calls from all over the motu, and we'd have that debate. Because some people would be really inflamed by that, just like they would be today, really inflamed by this kind of kōrero. Really offended by this kind of kōrero. But we've got to have the debate. Let's have the kōrero.
How does that, and so, right now, it's really hard to have a debate because it kind of tends to sort of descend into a really weird space. And we were talking about this last week, around how things escalate quite quickly in social media. There's no place for us to be able to, and this is what we're trying to do with this stream, which is to be able to find people to have constructive conflict with, have constructive conversation. We're working on that, but it is quite difficult at the moment to have a conversation where you disagree without it kind of turning into, really nasty personal stuff.
Social media is a beast.
Yeah.
But you can have your panel, Toy and Wairere, you fellas, you can have just like this.
We're doing it now.
We're doing it right now.
Of the day, and man, there's lots to talk about.
Yeah.
Lots to talk about.
There's lots of kaupapa that we need a wānanga.
Yes.
And, I don't know, those nasty ones, I don't know, I don't know.
Well, we see them come up in the comments, and right now we're kind of challenging and massaging them out a little bit, trying to tease out some of the arguments, get rid of the stuff that's just repetitive. So it is starting to get there, and we are inviting people here tonight that are in the comments, and if there's stuff that you want to kōrero about, and we can kind of get into it.
Just going back to the rituals thing, I find because our whare wānanga were shut down, there are not a lot of practitioners in the ritualized space. So, for example, when we're having tangihana, there are more priests, whether it's the Ringatu Church or the Anglican, you see them turn up, they have the outfits, so they've got the costumes, which make people know who the person is. They've got certain props, they've got waiata, they've got karakia, especially in the Ringatu, and they guide people through a process. And that when you're dealing with these spaces and stages in our life, like tangihana, where you are crossing over to the tahake or te arai, there does need to be a process, and people need to feel safe as a collective to be guided through that. I know at our Uncle Te Weti's tangihana, Dad and his mate led that, and so they were able to guide the people through it. It was a little bit different. People weren't really ready for it, but they enjoyed it. But we don't have a lot of practitioners because our whare wānanga were shut down, because there doesn't seem to be something else set up where there is because often when I see the priests going through it, they're just going through steps. Those steps were laid down before they got there, and they know they go through certain steps, and they got the karakia and the waiata to get you through those rituals. So is that a gap that is still missing and needs to be built and grown?
I think it depends where you go. I remember Te Miringa for Haia's tangi at Pariaka. It was absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. 4 or 5 days of karakia.
Aye.
And
Do you remember me at that tangi?
you know, and I remember you at the Hakari.
Do you remember? Because I turned up. The story of that.
You were fine.
Well, my
Yeah, he'd already
Dad
gone,
was
hey?
over in Europe. Dad was over in Europe, and he called me up at 5 o'clock on the Friday, saying, "Can you go down to Parihaka?" I was in Auckland, saying, "Can you go down to Parihaka to go and represent me with my at my mate the meeting is tangihana?" And I was like, "Oh, okay. When's the tangi?" He was like, "Tomorrow." I'm in Auckland. Got to get down to Parihaka. 5 o'clock on a Friday. Got to be there on Saturday. There was a kuia from Taranaki who was. I was at my kid's kura kaupapa, and there was a kuia there who overheard my conversation, who said, "Oh, I wonder if they're going to do one of those, atapō tangihana, where, in the middle of the night." And I was like, "Oh, man, I'm going to have to leave now." And so I left with the crew that I was with. We ended up stopping about halfway and having a moi at some other whānaus. We dropped some whānau off at that place. And then we were planning to leave to get to Parihaka at about 5 in the morning. I woke up at midnight and was like, "Oh, come on, let's go." And we left, and I just remember it being a pitch black dark night. There was cloudy, so there was no moon or stars, and I couldn't see anything. I'd never been to Parihaka before. And we roll up, and just as we missed the turn off at the peninsula, so we had to turn around, come back, and just as we were pulling up to Parihaka, this convoy of about 6 cars was coming out. And I was like, and it was about 3 in the morning. And I was like, well, this is odd. Oh, I mean, we're not doing anything. We might as well follow them and see what's going on. But it doesn't, I think there's hundreds of people at this tangi, so I don't think it's the actual nehu. Anyway, we followed them for about half an hour. Like I said, it was a dark night. I couldn't see anything, so I had no idea where we were going. 30 minutes later, we pull up, pitch black, wind the window down, and hear people rustling about, and I'm like, "Oh, kia ora, ko tēnei te nehu o te miringa." And I was like, "Ko wai tērā." It's like, "Oh, toi kai rākau." They're like, "Oh," somebody else, out of the pitch black, was like, "Ko wai tērā." I was like, "Oh, ko toi, ko au te tama o tame." And it was old Miriana Pittman. Yeah. And it was at that point that I found out that they'd taken the body, the tūpapaku, and we were at the foot of Te Maunga Taranaki, and I had inadvertently stumbled across the whānau who had taken the body because there was a bit of a tohe over where he was going to get buried. And, koena te tohu, koena te hono kei wanganui a rāua ko te miringa me tōku pāpā. And that's my story. And then we ended up staying there until the helicopter came and picked him up, and they did all the karakia, and he went up onto the maunga. And then I travelled back with the whānau to Parihaka. And when we turned up back there, everyone was like, where the hell did you come from? You haven't been here for the last bloody... And then you rock up, how were you on the inside crew? I was like, it's the wairua, rolling with the wairua, that one.
Rolling with the wairua.
Rolling with the wairua.
Yeah.
I like those kind of trips.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like those trips. I've been in a few of them.
There was thousands at that tangi. Thousands of people went to that tangi.
Yeah.
And, it was the karakia. But it was also, Mata Parehoka, the kuia there, who's done all that brilliant work around, recovering the waka whakatere tū pāpaku, and all of those titanga around the waka whakatere tū pāpaku, and not embalming, not going, because the Papa Tamiri wasn't taken to the undertakers or nothing like that. They used kawa, which was beautiful. Steeping kawa in olive oil and anointing the tū pāpaku with that. And what an incredible preservative, and putting kawa in with them in the waka whakatere tū pāpaku. And it's great to see that. See, we are recovering our ceremonies, and that's an example.
Yeah.
Another one in my, the work that I've been doing over the last few years is around Te Awa Atua, recovering our rites of passage, our purity rites, our ceremonies with our own sacred blood.
Yes.
Blood that renews whānau whakapapa lines. So it's all that work around recovering who we are as a people, and not letting other people determine who we are.
Yeah, that's a strong one, sis, because if you take a Christian paradigm, working with Te Awa Atua is, we lost, what happened there, my bro? Oh, there she is, she's back. We are, reclaiming that Te Awa Atua, the menstrual cycle in the moon is important. In the Christian paradigm, it's like, what are you doing? It's like,
well, to them, it's the curse of Eve. To us, it's a blessing. To us, it's a blessing because it connects us to our atua, to hine ahuone, papa, hina, mahuita. And without that blood, because the thing about that blood is it's the only blood that's not wound blood. It's regenerative life blood.
Yes.
The blood that renews whakapapa, ensures the continuation of whānau. So, of course, when it arrives for the first time, well, that's a whānau tikanga. It's not a woman's issue for us. It's a whānau issue,
Ida tanata.
Whereas for them, it's paru, and it's the source of female inferiority, and women aren't sacred, and they're not. They don't. The blood is polluting. Yeah. And so they've written all about us. This is the thing, is that, those colonial historians who wrote about who we are as a people, who redefined wahinetanga in ways that are incredibly derogatory, and we live with the outcome of that 200 years on. We really do, because what the shit that they wrote has been recycled,
When I grew up, the term for menstrual cycles was te mate wahine. That's what I always knew it was.
It's a mate and an order. It's the death of an ancestor, returning to Papa Tuanuku on the blood flow. No, but it's also life, because it regenerates whānau whakapapa. So it's both. That blood is the blood of life, death, and renewal. It's full cycle of creation right there.
Right there.
And we see that cycle in the marama, Hine Te Iwaiwa, and her cycle each month. She gives birth to herself on the new moon, which is when we bled. She comes into her fullness, into the full moon. That's when we ovulated traditionally. And then she would begin to retreat again to give birth to herself on the new moon. Same as Papa's seasonal cycle. She retreats in winter, she gives birth to herself in spring, she's fully fertile in summer, autumn is the harvest, and then she begins her retreat back into the womb again. So it's that cycle of life, death, and the mystery of renewal that wahine hold. Hey.
Beautiful.
Absolutely beautiful. Yeah. And this is, and I it's so great to hear you speaking again, Nahuia, because I had the sort of privilege of being able to hear you speak at the Hui Ora online conference that was on, and yeah, it really inspired me, your kōrero and that, in terms of particularly, I guess, as a male and as somebody who's possibly kind of had these kind of roles and some of these things kind of put into me as a male and through the way that we've been raised, and to really open my eyes to another way of thinking about how this stuff works. And what struck me also was that how much it's needed, this kōrero is needed in the wider conversation. And that's I've been doing a bit of work in the music industry with the organization Soundcheck Aotearoa, which right now is kind of through the research they've done, there's been some issues around sexual harm and sexual harassment, and for a large part of the time that the industry, the mainstream industry, has been up and running and coming from that Western industry commercial construct, has come with some really toxic and really paru, rotten aspects to it that are now, hypersexualization of women, misogyny, all these kind of things. And I really long for your kōrero to be introduced into the industry so people can start to reframe how they're thinking about this stuff. And and so anyway, I think it's just,
I feel robbed of being able to talk about these things, about the beauty of Te Awa o Te Atua, because you can't talk about this stuff, but maybe we can. Maybe if we frame it culturally within our perspectives of actually this is our connection to death, to birth, to regeneration. This is something that should not be hidden. This is something that should be celebrated. That would shift our dysfunction and our dysfunctional relationship with hypersexualized people, with women within the music industry. And it's like, why are we cheapening these things?
Because Pākehā society strips the sacred. Doesn't
Can it be reformed?
The thing is, for us,
well, Pākehā society,
yeah, the Pākehā society. So you're saying that it strips the sacred, but is that
certainly from wahine? The thing for us to remember as tangata whenua is that our tipuna spoke about these things openly and in the spirit of celebration. It's like both male and female genitalia. One of the ancient names for both male and female genitalia is tawhito, the ancient center of life, and we used to talk about these things openly, and our tāne were never excluded from those awa atua ceremonies. They had a stake in the kōrero. They've got a place there because some of the old pūrākau that trace the origins of the blood say it came from Papatuanuku. It came from Papatuanuku during the pō. And Tāne discovered a whole new world beyond the pō by riding out on the awa atua of his mother from the pō into Te Ao Marama. So that's that's how Tane have a stake in these kōrero. And then we know Ngā Pōtiki Ngāuri a Māui have got another version about Māui seeking immortality, being crushed by Hinenu before, and he became the first awa atua to come into the world. So one of the old names for the blood is Māui, you know. And so our Tane have got a long history of association with the blood. They used the blood in their war rites when they lost courage. They anointed their weapons with it. You know, so like us before, it's not a woman's issue for us. You know, we spoke about the blood openly, and actually when you look at our rituals, that blood bonded genders, through our ceremony, and it bonded the generation.
It makes sense. I would bear that blood if I was going into battle, knowing that I was going to cross back over, because that's from whence I came. For me, that makes complete sense. That's the connection to the other side. I would go, this is where I came from, this is where I returned to. And
that's right.
And
the thing is, for colonization to be successful, they had to smash the bond between us as tribal sisters and brothers. Yeah. Shoulder to shoulder for the whenua and our tinoranga tiratanga.
I have another conspiracy, not conspiracy. I've got another whakaaro on that too. That the whole power structure of government inside of the Pākehā system comes from this mythology of a celestial government, a celestial king, God of gods, King of kings, who sits on a throne and passes judgment. And that is reflected through the systems that they then pass on down. Our Atua didn't sit in judgment of us and decide whether we were going to go to heaven or hell. They did not. They didn't have that role. Was Christianity, and it's the same all over the world. Like what I found when I travelled amongst other Indigenous people is it's the same all over the world. When the colonizers came, the first thing that they did was bring in Christianity to normalize and naturalize the idea of being ruled over by others. Yes.
Because when you look at Christian prayers, there's a politic of domination.
There's a hierarchy. There's a hierarchy automatically.
Right. When you look at our taku and our karakia, it's just not there.
No.
What we are, what we have are statements and commands, and we lay out a process and a formula where we invoke our elders, our relations, to achieve an outcome. You know, it's a totally different thing. We didn't bow. We raised our arms and our chest, our chin to the elements, our atua, our elders. You know, so it's a different thing. What I found when I was traveling, you know, and spending time with other Indigenous peoples, is the first thing was Christianity. The second thing was smashing that bond between Tane and Mahi and tribal sisters.
Do you find that, you know, with those other Indigenous cultures that you were working with, it was the effect of that Christianity was the same? It had this, you know.
Same, yeah. Colonization's pretty much been
everywhere,
all over the place. It's inherently patriarchal. It's a patriarchal process. You know. So, I mean, one of the best things I've ever done was travel to just spend time with the Mohawks in Turtle Island in Canada in the theatre. I think I was telling you about this, Tame. Actually, no, Tame, I came to visit you, and I bought in Tane Atu at the gallery, and I bought Santi Smith, the director, the director of Kahawi dance theatre,
yes,
choreographer and dance artist. Yeah, and she'd gotten a hold of Te Awa Atua, and she was making a theatre work. Her company were making a theatre work all with Indigenous cast from around the world, and she was using the theatre as a sacred ceremonial place to reactivate these ancient womb blood ceremonies that have been put to sleep over 500 years of colonisation.
Yes.
You know, and so a lot of the things that we talk about What happened to the wahine here? Same thing as what happened to the Hawaiians. Same thing as what happened to them up in Canada. Same thing as what happened to the Dakota people, the Ojibwe and other First Nations people that I rolled with in Turtle Island. Same story, you know. And we're all also in the same kind of journey of recovering who we are.
Yeah. It really is a recovery process.
Yeah, it's an intergenerational one, you know, and in every generation we've got our part to play, you know.
That's why it used to be decolonization. Now I feel it's re-indigenization.
Yeah, but I still think we got to decolonize, because for me, decolonization, a key sort of element of decolonization is purging and releasing and shedding, you know, other people's definitions of who we are as a people. Yeah. We got to go through a process of shedding.
It's a big mahi. It's a big mahi. It's a big mahi, you know, we can talk about it now, but actually taking this conversation in the wider space, you know, it's a huge. I do every now and then. I get up, you know, against everybody else. I just get up. The two of us are capable of doing that. It's myself and my mate, the Iti, about this conversation. And we do it right in the middle of a karakia. And you had to do it right in the middle when they're actually doing their rituals. And without, it's not a screaming match. You're trying to have this conversation, you know, like that. So you got to create the tone of your voice so that doesn't look you, to make sense. Because after having their moment, having their conversation in amongst all the hundreds of people there, everybody knocked their head. You know, we spend the 3 days here, we practice our rituals, and on the last day of the karakia, then they come up with this totally out of it conversation. It doesn't make sense. You know, and so we, you know, I done it in Ruatahuna. Yeah, and I can tell the two places there, Ruatoki and Ruatahuna, and bring that conversation. But you got to do it in front of everybody. Yeah, and then everybody knocked their head. So there's some moments of that. So, you know, the kōrero that we're doing now, so we can talk about it now, but how do we take that kōrero to the next step, and put that challenge over there? That's where we need to take it to.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
Because I've seen you in the.
A lot of whānau are just taking teachings that empower and heal and decolonize them, and they're running with them. And they're reclaiming and recreating tikanga for themselves in their own whānau.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and just getting on with it.
And so that's what you're saying, Eina Hui, is that there are pockets. There's different whānau who are reclaiming at different spaces in those times, and actually just doing it.
It's happening.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
It's happening. It's happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great to hear. Up in the whārua, it feels a little bit sort of. It still feels a little, you know, you're confronted with every tangihana. It is, you know, there's the hahi, ringatu, and they're going through their ritual. And I've seen Dad stand in the kai kōrero and say, oh, ka haere ia kei here. You know, where's this fella going to the tūpapaku? Is he going back to his tūpuna, to his maunga, or is he going to heaven?
Oh,
and then the fellas on the other side of the pie, they'd laugh, you know, they ha, you know, oh, yeah. And they kind of know he's got a point, but they don't do anything because people are just happy to just go with what is already set. They don't, too much work to go back through and really think about things. It's kind of like I find when we have birthdays, you bring out the cake and you sing happy birthday and you blow out the candles. People don't know what they're bloody doing. They don't know why they're blowing candles out. It's just that's what you do. And people just want to get through it. Same with 21st, you drink the yari. People don't know why they do these things that they do, but we just go through the rituals. Getting married, I've seen people now doing bloody gender reveals as part of, you know, and they're already pink or blue. already placing colors on genders and crazy things like that. So it's I know it takes a lot of work to think about these things and to take them seriously and to know actually if we continue sleepwalking through these rituals for the sake of convenience, for the sake of just, it's there, who cares, we will continue to be slaves to it.
Yeah, it's hard, man. It takes courageous leadership, courageous visionary leadership.
There is when you talk about decolonization and I guess the adoption of some of this of the colonized structure. Are we saying that in order to decolonize, it feels like we're saying it's a move backwards? I don't know if that's true. I'm just saying that there is a sense that to decolonize is to move back.
Nah, I don't reckon.
Okay.
Nah. To me, it's like we're always moving forward. Like we're always moving. We're in a state of perpetual movement, and decolonization is a process that will take our whole lives. And to me, it's a process of purification and shedding the things that don't feed our mauri as a people. When we look at our tikanga, we've got to ask ourselves: Does this empower us? Is this healing? Does it restore the balance that's been smashed to smithereens by colonization? Or does it continue to perpetuate dysfunction? And then we got to ask ourselves, at what point do we decide to evolve our own tikanga?
Exactly. And so are there parts of the pre-colonized state which require evolution or don't, as you say, empower us?
I think so, man. I really believe with all my heart that our ancestral teachings as Indigenous people provide us with the solutions to the crisis that we face. I really do. I think we've got to look to our tipuna teachings to find the solutions.
But is there anything?
We won't find it in capitalist society. We won't find it in Pākehā society because they created the problems.
But do you think there's anything though that needs to be left without?
I'd say cannibalism. We could probably leave it. We could probably leave.
Well, Dad's a vegan, so he at one point he was trespassers will be eaten.
Well done.
And now he's vegan. So I don't. There's the contradiction right there.
So do you see?
Well done.
No, yeah. Do you see a benefit in crown structures, institutions? I know at the regional council we have elevated the role of Mātauranga Māori. We now take Mātauranga Māori into account alongside of science. Do you think that's just you don't think it'll help?
Waitangi. The Tiriti o Waitangi contract, the international contract, it's got to be the cornerstone of all government structure. Because that gives them the right, that gives Pākehā the right to be here. It's about partnership. Never mind.
And so it is actually then part of them meeting their obligations under Te Tiriti is to include Mātauranga Māori.
Oh, not only include it, it's got to be a partnership like that.
Yeah.
No, there was.
It's got to be a partnership. Got to be. Yeah.
My head's ticking over on how we practically do that. I might be just being I'm trying to think on, because you're dealing with there is, I can tell around the table, a growing respect for Mātauranga Māori, but it is not as, it may be the practitioners that we have in the Mātauranga space, because we've lost so goddamn fucking much. We've lost so much, and you're sitting there.
The work's been done by Mātike Ma, Moana Jackson and all them, Veronica Tāwhai, Matariki, and them, they're the next generation taking up the mantle to really wānanga How does this work? Constitutional transformation. Te tiriti or waitangi as the foundation of all sort of infrastructure in the country. I mean, you ask those ones. Get some of those ones on. You know, they'll have some bloody great kōrero about it, how you do it. How do you do it?
And I've spoken to some of them. Look, the reality is I've spoken to some of them, and I sit at the cold face. I'm just going to, play devil's advocate here just for the sake of it. Aspirationally, I'm just 100% with you. I'm at the cold face dealing with cold face Pākehā, capitalism, we own a port, we talk public transport, we talk climate change, we talk infrastructure. I would have to do it at the point of a gun to get them to shift, to get them to change. And I would have to get rid of their schools, I would have to get rid of their religion and their church for me to battle that out.
Whether they like it or not, it's happening. Whether they like it or not, it's happening because we're not going anywhere.
Not going anywhere.
Yeah. Well, it's not really the place. This kind of form is not really the place for us to say tamati stake. Not yet, because they you got to bang their head with a hammer.
Because we got our own work to do within our own. I mean, the post-settlement landscape itself has been destructive. We have now created entities under crown constructs to receive settlement money who have become the officers of the treaty or whatever, but they have become the mandated authorities, but they are guided by trust deeds and that's a whole nother thing around how we govern ourselves. It's just like, this is a huge conversation we've got to have with ourselves before we can even talk to Pākehā.
Yeah, totally, man. You're so right, boy. We got to do it all. We got to do it all.
Do it all. There's
no
easy way.
This is how it is. There's no easy way.
That's how we're going to do it.
What I love about you and Nando as a partnership, sis, is that because me and Nando vibe on the whole local government front and the technicalities and that, and meanwhile I know he's at home with you. I know it. He's at home dealing with you.
Poor fucking guy. Oh my God.
Oh, it's amazing. What a duo.
To me, when you going into Parliament, I was like, I couldn't bear it. Are you kidding? It's not my jam. Oh.
Yeah. I'd
rather paint. Like you, I'd rather paint. I'd rather dance.
Yeah.
I'd rather do ceremony.
Yeah. You got to do it. That's the only way you got to do it. I'm not going to enter into some of these arguments. I can't be bothered. I've been doing it for a long time. I'm literally been doing it for a long time. I can't be bothered. I'm just going to do it. To me, this is where freedom is. Freedom to be able to do the things you love to do and create a space. And before people kind of wake up, we're doing it. You got to walk it. You got to walk the talk. We got to walk the talk. And I think time to blah 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 with ourselves. We just spend our time debating and arguing and hate one another. And I don't want that. I love my whānau. I can't change them. I'm not there to change them. We're not there to change them. There's 250 years of collateral damage. And I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to walk the talk what I do, where I am. And that's the reason I'm here right at this space. I'm enjoying every little bit of it, and working with the Wairere and Toi, sharing those concepts and ideas, finding another way to take those little wee hikoi. Actually, we're not doing little hikoi, we're doing big, long step. We're just moving like that, and then to their face. And we're doing it in another way, not in an aggressive way, not in a whakahihi way, but art is the vehicle, that the way kai roto koe I tō ira atua, ira tanata, ira atua, and to become the co-creator. And so we practice it, we got to live it. So I can't be, it's good to have this conversation with you. And I think that's really important too. And it's really important for us to have this conversation right here at this moment, to share this whakaaro with the people that are here online, that in Ahitereiria, around the motu, because we can't do it any other way. You know, there's no other way. It's the reason why we're having this conversation on the Monday and the Thursday, because we can do it. Yeah.
I love it. I love that. Tame, just mahi te mahi.
Mahi te mahi.
In my arguing, just do it. Just do it.
Yeah. Aye. Aye. That's it.
Yeah. Despite what he says, he still likes to provoke. He you know. Yeah. So he's like, oh, you know, I'm just chill out and just do my art and I just do my thing without bothering anyone. But it's like, you know, there's definitely a part of that younger Tame Iti who likes to kind of put the weirdo out.
Provocateur.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that those are the rituals in ira atua, ira tangata. Ki te ara o tū, ko tū te winiwini o tū matauena, ki te ara o rono. Ki te ara o mahuika, i te ara o hine ahu one, o te marama o ngā whetū, o te pūtai ao. You know, and then pull all that together. And then it's not lip service. We gotta ask you, what do that look like in 2022? What do that look like here in the mirror? What do that look like for me at my age? You know, and so we gotta try and not just trying to paint a picture here, but paint a picture in our minds, in our soul. I te nā kau, i te wairua. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Yes. Love that. Art is everything. Eh?
Yeah.
Art is everything. Yeah. You know, one of the kōrero from the Hawaiians that I love so much is about hula. You know, hula as the dance, the body as a vehicle for the atua to mount and dance and chant their own reality. Yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
Beautiful.
You know, so they got their pele, their hula pele and their hula hiiakan. And they talk about that the body becomes a tuahu. Or the atua to mount and tell their own story through the body, you know, of the dancer, through the voice of the chanter, and total alignment. You know, I love art.
Yeah, that's why I like Limi Panafasia, you know.
Yeah.
I love his work. You know, they kind of approach.
Yeah. It's so stunning. I saw his requiem. And that was incredible. Incredible. It's amazing what you can do in the theatre. That requiem was like they were kind of sifting through the underworld looking for trapped souls and those ones that are stranded, you know, stranded by raupatu, stranded by war, stranded by violence, stranded between the worlds, and they were and through the process of requiem, it was like a ceremony of release.
Yes.
Where at the very end, you know, they were liberated. Those ones that were stranded were liberated. You know, they're freed.
Aye.
We got some theatre coming up. We're going to be calling you, sis.
You go on.
Yeah, of course. Hey, thanks for coming on. Everybody out there, when I first approached Nahui, I was like, "Come on, sis," and she was like, "Oh, you know I'm shy." And I'm like, whatever. I was like, just come on, talk to us. Forget about everyone else. Just come talk to us. It'll be sweet as.
I think we should make this a regular segment. It's just the energy that you're bringing, and the kōrero is amazing. I just love it. So it's something that we could really, you know, we should check in at least once a month.
No.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
No.
Maybe annually.
Annually. Yeah, no, thank you, sis. Thank you for blessing us with your presence, with your energy, with your mātauranga, your passion, your you. So it's thank you.
Ai, e mihi kauatana kia koe mārei kura, te wahine, rangatira, ariki, ko koe tēnā, e mihi kaua tana i a koe mo e nā kōrero whakahirahira. E hoki nā ki te ao o rātau, ki te ao o te nehe. He kōrero tapu, he kōrero tika, he kōrero pono. Ira tanata, ira atua, koina nā kōrero. Wano kai te mihi atu ki a koe, i rau i ka mai koe ki wānu i a mātau, ko te hunei araren mai ni o rātau nā tarina ki te whakarono ni a koe i tēnei pō, kai te reka i a rātau, tēnā whakaaro, i kakao rātau nā kau. Koina te mea nui, no reira, e mihi kaua tani i a koe, mauri ora, nā mihi.
Tēnā, mauri ora.
Choice.
Real choice.
Yeah, well, that was really good, and I think there's a.
It's inspiring.
And they are, being in a lot of those sort of types of conversation and practices over the years, and there are people with those sort of knowledge. There are people already doing their kind of practices around the motu, because for the same kōrero that we're talking about, that there are different people up north in Taranaki right around the motu really, because there's a new arising, and this conversation is actually been developed over in a long period of time. In fact, I can make a phone call and just get some of those people just to talk about those take. And even the project talking about Ngā Whetū with the pūtai ao.
Yes, the rangi mātāmua, let's get rangi mātāmua.
And rangi mātāmua, because they're all connected, those kōrero, in terms of what that is, and they're all connected. Yeah, so when we're talking about the kaitanata stuff, you don't literally physically kaitanata. Is kaitanata, even gossip and no tuara is a kaitanata in the way we do things. And we normally use that phrase, kai te kaitanata tumike, we need tānata. It's a kōrero that we kind of refer to people, gossiping. And takahi te wairua I te mana, he kaitanata tērā tanata. That kind of kōrero. Not literally having the feast. Yeah.
There's a ritual to it.
It's a ritual. And the reason a lot of our tipuna used to go in having a kaitanata, it wasn't because they're hungry, they are ritual. And one of the things, they go for the heart, they take the heart out and o kai tērā. He kōrero tērā ki nā atua. And all of that. Yeah, just the way things are being misinterpreted. They think we are cannibalism, all of that. Kōrero puare no wera. Kare te tika wera kōrero. So that's why it's really important for a lot of our own storytellers, to write it. There are people there that are able to write it. Ke tika te kōrero, ke pono te kōrero. Not good conversation to Manihiri.
We definitely have to get on our project coming up, our theatre, music theatre, ritual. That's a must, that one.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do a bit of a check-in here on the comments, just to say kia ora to those who are watching and chucking in comments. Sorry, once these conversations start, they get pretty spirited and we lose track of who's out there. But Jungle Whari, kia ora. We had Tia Kihana, kia ora. There's a conversation there, so getting into the conversation about decolonisation. Kei Moke, kia ora. I see Paleale's in the house. Paleale and Pork Bonehead, or Pork Bone Kid, sorry. And so he got that nickname, didn't he? So kia ora over there on Twitch, and everyone else who's just who's chiming in to.
Kei Moke saying, I feel really awesome. I felt low about our Māoritanga lately, and it's good to see and hear conversation of this kind, feeding the spirit and mind for my tina. And she's very infectious, isn't she? Contagious energy and enthusiasm and optimism about us being able to have the ability and the energy that we are going to. When I talk to her, there is no doubt in her head that we are going to reclaim our indigeneity and these stories and our connection to these parts of ourselves, that it is not over. And it is. She's very inspiring and courageous and infectious in that space. So I agree with you, Kay.
It's also like in a time where there isn't much, like I guess what Kay's pointing out is that right now there isn't much out there that's being positive, that it is being optimistic. So somebody like Nahuia coming on, who's just unbridled and just goes hard. It's so refreshing to be around and to sort of experience. So kia ora for that.
Good to see wahine, and after we lost all the kuia and all the wahine that I know, and characters like Whaia Maklachi from Ngāti Porou. Man, she's just amazing woman. And the good thing about those sort of women is that they were able to do that in the bigger audience. They're not afraid to speak their mind, and those women, they come in. I know she came over to Wairaka, and she just got up on the marae and did a whai kōrero, and everybody sort of kind of shocked, and that kind of person. But it's the way she does it, the way she carries. She's quite a big woman, but the way she carries herself, with a big loud voice. Her voice is really loud. That kind of person. And that's what I mean. If you're able to take these types of conversation to the mass,
so you're saying to the marae?
Yeah. I'm talking about the marae, and take it to your tribal or to a marae, and put it, because I've seen it. I've seen it done with my own. So people like Whaia Maklachi, people like Tita Whai Harawira, she's like that too. She does it at Waitangi. I remember when I did that tuha on the ground with I can't remember the name of the Prime Minister. He's now with the Udi with the bull.
Jim Bolger.
Yeah, Jim Bolger. With Jim Bolger and Tizard, the Governor General. And I remember doing that bit of a tuha, and they're riding on the marae there. And then my Uncle John got up there, so he was having a go at me. And then when he comes into Māori, but Tita Whai got up there. And the Hokwai Kiraro, having those sort of types of characters in the space, it's become very theatrical. And very theatrical. So Eva Ricard, I remember seeing Eva Ricard doing that at Narua Wahia, but she knew how to do it. So she didn't do it on the marae out there. She went down on the mahau of the whare and standing right there. And then she started talking, and she actually sung in Waiataya. So that kind of it, and nobody could sit it down. And so it's really the knowing and avoiding the booby traps on the marae out there. So nobody can actually sit you down. So that's weird, and you don't really see that kind of things there happening that I know of at this stage. But having people like her, it's another generation of women coming into the space and sharing their kōrero. It'd be really good for them to take it to the marae out there. But this is our marae out there. We are doing it. Tawhiti nui, tawhiti roa, and that's what we're doing. This is our marae out there. So you don't have to be on their marae out there, down next door to you. That we already creating the space for us to be able to share this conversation. You don't have to go to TV1, TV2, Te Korero. We actually created the space for us to be having the freedom to express our whakaaro and put our whakaaro, and that's what we're doing. Kia ora.
And be challenged on how it is that we perceive it. And
Speaking of which, we have, I did reach out to Mana Media News, who were one of the people streaming from down in Wellington, and they want to do a double stream where they're streaming on their side and we're streaming on this side. Of course, they're part of the Freedom and Rights Coalition, I think. In terms of being a marae Aotea, and being able to have these conversations, these difficult conversations, I thought, you know, that's we talked about that, and so they've come back and said, we might do that on Thursday. After having such an amazing conversation with Ngāhuia, I'm kind of like, do I want to go back into that? But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I think it's a good idea. You know, korea te marae atea. Te marae atea ki te ara o tūmatau. Then enable anybody, you don't have to fucking agree with anybody, with anything. And it's because they created a space there ki ngā kōrero rerekētana. And you don't have to go there until you can actually walk away, lay out your kōrero and walk out the gates. And but the most important thing there that you ko takoto o kōrero. Ko rono te tipuna whare, ko rono ngā tarina, so they creating a space. And then it become a database, a whakapapa. It become that conversation become a whakapapa. And then, I mōhio I ronga I tako tipuna krau e tūai ki runa I te marae, nei tana kōrero. And so it become the narrative of those conversations. So, yep, and that's what we're doing here. Kei runa te marae atea.
Oh yeah, I'm into it too. I mean, I think it's the next sort of stage for us in terms of how we're trying to think about this format that we're trying to build and the platform, and the types of discussions that we're starting to get into, and you know, and to have somebody like Ngāhuia on, and who can really kind of inspire us about decolonization and sort of the journey and reclaiming our indigeneity and also our evolution. And so how this and what we're doing provides for that empowerment that she was talking about. And so and having constructive conflict and constructive conversations around this is what we need to start learning how to do, because it's not just going to be mana media. You know, these hard conversations are having to be had with ourselves, with our whānau, with our iwi and our hapu, because we have become so fragmented. So being able to find a place to have that discussion and start to really build out our toolkit and being able to do that. Why not start there?
Yeah. So well, when I first stumbled across it was actually because I saw him talking to, he called up Matthew Tukaki's show on Radio Wātea, and he was streaming his conversation with Matt. Matt ended up cutting him off because he's running a different format, but we can sit here and have a bit of a conversation. And I don't think it's necessarily about convincing them about, you know, our view on things. I do have some genuine questions about how they see things, and what solutions they're coming forward with, but you know, not you know, just having the kōrero, not necessarily wanting to give them another platform. They'll be streaming as well, and so they've got their audience obviously who are very much in tune with their message and their whakaaro of that kaupapa, and so we'll be going live to their audience as well as you know, and they're pretty staunch. They're very staunch on how they see things around the mandates around certain kōrero. So we'll see how that goes. So that's coming up on Thursday. They're wanting to do that. At the break.
You would have seen as well, you know, speaking of sort of challenging ourselves, there was a bit of kōrero around some remarks that were made online around hip hop in Aotearoa, and sort of something kicked off. And then and it's sort of landed with DJ Severe, and he came out with an apology yesterday. But I know that we were talking about. I don't know, bro. Are you able to kind of give a little bit of context on sort of where that whole thing started? Because I felt your kōrero around that was pretty, you know, in terms of understanding the discussion.
Yeah, I think there are several parts to the story. One of it is social media and how quickly things can blow up on social media. but I think largely also it is around Māori and Pacifica Island hip-hop communities not necessarily paying the respect to the black community around where hip-hop was born. So taking potentially, well, the conversation that was given by some African community members was that there is black erasure happening. That Kiwi hip-hop, Māori hip-hop and Pacifica hip-hop are claiming hip-hop as their own and not acknowledging that hip-hop was born out of the mamai, the pain, the stress and pressure of African American communities and the African experience, basically. And so somebody made a comment about being able to go to a concert, a hip hop concert overseas, and not hear all of the non-black people around them use the N-word, and how good he felt about that. And this is a New Zealander, said that on Twitter. Some other hip hopper wrote back, that is, don't come back then. And then the bro DJ Severe said, liked it. And then there was some black influencers, you could say, or social media people who pulled him up on that and called him in on that. And he apologized on Sunday because he said he didn't handle it very well. So there was some contrition there and some acknowledgement that he didn't handle that situation of being challenged on supporting what was an anti-black comment on social media. Somebody made the comment that he'd built his career on the back of a black art, on the back of black art in terms of hip hop. And but then there was another conversation that came out, which I thought was interesting, around the use of slurs within Samoan language, which was mea ale, which means black thing, which was in reference to Solomon Islanders that were imported by Germans as indentured servants, or basically slaves, economic slaves, into Samoa, and Samoans referring to the Solomon Islanders as mea ale, and that they shouldn't do that anymore, and that often Samoans will refer to black people as mea ale, which is a black thing. I know and so I thought that was interesting because we have a riwai, a Māori potato called
Niga,
or ure nika, which ure, as in te ure wera, ure is the male appendage, and nika is a transliteration for the N-word. So you can put those together and understand what ure nika stands for. And as to whether or not, and I've actually had this debate on social media before, of all places, on a gardening group, where, you know, it's the weirdest thing when you see this really well-meaning Pākehā lady going, oh, I love ure nika. You know, it's the sweetest thing, ure nika. It's my favorite. And me coming in, which always sounds hilarious to me, and me coming in saying, actually, this is what that means, and we actually call it peru peru. And then actually having a Māori, some auntie turn up into the conversation, goes, no, it's ure nika, that's what my grandmother called it, and that's what I'll call it, and don't you dare say that it's going to be called anything else. And having that sort of attitude of holding on to these things that have dated, because these terms were brought about into a space where where white supremacy and these things were so prevalent and we were so beaten down that we didn't question these things, and they've kind of carried through. And as to at what point as a culture do we start to go, actually that's not okay. So yeah.
It's been a fascinating sort of discussion to be having, and I've had it with multiple people, Māori, who are wonder as well, in terms of how colonized we've become, or how we've inadvertently started potentially taken on aspects of things that's of a Western culture without realizing it. So the idea that we might actually be appropriating someone else's culture.
Yeah, and that we cannot say the N-word. That as Polynesians and Maori, we can't say the N-word because it is not something that we can flip, and because it was not used against us. We could flip the word Hori like our mate, the Hori the artist did, where you reclaim certain words. And so African Americans have reclaimed the N-word and used it as a term of endearment in many ways, because they're reclaiming that word that was used against them. That word was not used against us, so we cannot use it. And that was part of the argument as well, that we feel entitled to use it because we think we're people of color, but actually we're indigenous people, potentially, in terms of the BIPOC. Yeah.
Yeah, and plus the other thing was specifically with that the Black African American experience is that they've been completely severed from their indigenous cultures. So they've had to, that's the N-word has been born out of that slavery period, and them having to reclaim it because they've got no, it's hard for them to intergenerationally move back into their culture. This has become their culture. Yes. Anyway, fascinating stuff. I thought it was quite interesting, and I really liked Sabia's apology. I
saw that.
In terms of him kind of taking on board what some of that feedback has been, and gave me hope that this is not, that we can work through this stuff and self-analyze where we are and what we're doing. Particularly somebody like Sabia, who's been, a pioneer of Aotearoa hip hop for a long time. Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. And there was also a clip. They did a clip out of a hip hop documentary around New Zealand hip hop, which had the bro DLT, who we had on like a couple of weeks ago, Lady Six and Mareko, who all were saying no one owns hip hop. Hip hop is owned by everybody. There is no ownership. If you want to own hip hop, you can. And I don't know. I think you can be involved in hip hop. You can appreciate hip hop. You can be influenced by hip hop. I think saying that you own hip hop, I don't know. I don't. That doesn't seem to sit right with me. And so they pieced that together, and that was part of a News article that was written. So they got tied up in all of this as well. But interesting, kōrero. It's the same thing that you got to have these conversations, because I think the hip hop, the Pacific Island and Māori hip hop communities have just gone along and have just been doing their thing and not necessarily thought about this until Black African people have brought it up. And it was interesting when I was looking through the socials how Black people were responding to it, and they were like, no, you cannot claim it as your own. And I think that's the tohu there. I think that's the sign. So
do we do it with reggae?
I think if you're caught up on it, I think it was because they cut together some specific sound bites that said nobody owns it. It is just everybody's. And I think that's what Black Erasure speaks to. That you're suddenly taking them completely out of the picture. I don't think anybody would take Jamaica out of reggae. No one would ever say, oh no, reggae is a world music thing, and anybody who sings reggae and does reggae is reggae, and everybody owns reggae. I think people would go, that was born out of Jamaica. It's a very specific thing. Same with jazz. Same with a lot of musical, because African Americans were erased from jazz often. I mean, there was the conversation too around Elvis and the Rolling Stones. They took black music and then these white guys did it and it became popular. So I think that's the wider conversation there. Yes.
Yeah, we can bring Michael Vanti on it and have a chat about that. We can get it.
Has it been around? I haven't seen him on the scene for a little while, Dad.
Yeah. Well, even Eki in Fundamentalist in London.
We have actually reached out to Sevilla, and you know, he was in the process of trying to cool things down and keep things on the level till he could get his statement out. So maybe he might want to kind of keep things cool. And now that he's released his apology, not kind of create anything more, but the invitation's out there for the bros to come on. And
I think it's still a conversation that needs to be had with the wider public and community. I think once these sorts of things, you know, trying to sort of just move on so you don't kind of talk about it anymore because it's a difficult conversation is, you know, not necessarily the way to go. But it's up to him if he wants to come on and have a chat about it, and it's not about his you know, sorry tour where he's got to go on all the media outlets and say sorry. It's about actually this is an interesting conversation that we need to have, because we certainly as Māori get quite precious about people appropriating Māori culture. We do. You know, when people start doing haka and saying, oh, nah, this is a Kiwi thing, and we're like, I don't know about that. So I think it's something we've got to think about.
Yeah, I mean, it's something else that sort of kind of came along with some of these conversations I was having, which was around, I guess, the part where Māori become, you know, you were talking about it before with Nahuia, where there's this, and I got a sense that she was kind of like, maybe, which is, you know, Māori are considered sort of at the forefront of tangata whenua, indigenous rights, you know, and being able to, you know,
I hear that
have their culture as part of the, you know, the part of our everyday life. And you know, and there's obviously this thing where black people are hearing Māoris or Pacific Island people, you know, start talking about hip hop as their own, possibly rolling their eyes and going, no, that's not right. And I wonder if there and Dad, I think this kind of came up once with your mural being painted in Hawaii, and this feeling that, you know, that the Māori culture can force itself or dominate because of its position in indigenous rights movements, as an example, and that perhaps the people in Hawaii don't want to see your face, and they would rather see one of their own in a mural.
Agree. Yeah.
And then you kind of start to think about, and this is what came up in our conversations about the marae that they're hoping to put up in Australia.
Yep.
You know, and how that, you know, these communities of Māori within these spaces forget the principle of tangata whenua and want to assert their Māoritanga in those spaces. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I had this conversation, and because they called me over the years, and I said to them, you don't have to build a marae to have a marae. The marae out there is creating a space. All it means is creating a space. It's your marae out there. Not literally you had to build a marae. You know, you consider as a marae is really creating a space for you to gather, to bring your people around in that space. That's your marae out there. It could be your home. Yeah. It could be a space for the moment. In the moment that we have an event that becomes the marae out there. and that be a place of gathering. And you have a waitangi event that become the gathering of the marae Aotea. And I wasn't really talking about, you build up a chipuna whare, but creating the marae Aotea and having really the understanding of that, what that is. So people get quite confused in building a marae, meaning putting a big, huge marae.
It's like looking at it like a mosque or a temple for the Sikh
that's
community.
The other thing. Yeah.
That it's Islamic people build mosques so they have a place to go and practice their rituals. So do the Sikh. They build temples so they have a place to go to practice their rituals. And for me, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, well, just like the Catholic and the Church of England.
Exactly, it's the same thing.
And the Presbyterian.
So are we going to behave like that? That's the question.
Yeah. So no, I wasn't really talking about that at all. Really talking about having those space there where you can have whānau. We got hundreds and thousands of us living in Australia, and you don't have to build the marae chipuna whare. No, doesn't need to. That. In the name of the Holy Ghost.
The Holy Goats.
Yeah, the Holy Ghost. Kaupai. Hey, so are we just about there, eh?
Yeah.
And
I'm happy to call it.
Yep. And well, there was a good kōrero, everybody, a good response. E mihi kautana ki a kōtau I tēnei pō. Rarau mai anō I konei, I nā rā e tū mai nei I te rā taite. So we're back here again, and thank you for your response and your whakaaro that you put here on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. Thank you to Toia Wairere and to ourselves. And kia koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Ngā mihi koutou.
Mauri.